Alright, so today we're going to go over a couple photos here that I'm going to work on. These are the ones that I like the most that I took the other day. I took these with a Sony A6000. These are all with the FE 50 1.8 lens as well. These are the ones I like the most that I took from the day. I didn't take very many. And we'll just kind of go through these and see what I can come up with and see if I even like how these are going to come out. So when I took this one, I kind of had a sort of high contrasted thought for this. I could kind of see it in my mind how I wanted it to come out. And I was thinking that it could possibly work as a black and white as well. But I'm going to kind of tinker with each of the settings here to see what I can come up with that I might like. So, try not to blow too much of these highlights out here, and I may have to actually split process these. A little clarity to it. I don't want to do too much though. And I actually just upgraded my Lightroom as well, so I'm kind of getting used to this new layout. I've been using the other layout for as long as I can remember. This has kind of changed everything here that I'm used to. Some of these noise reduction, all these shadows here. Let's see. We got a lot of color noise here, but you really can't tell too much, so straighten this out too. Kind of want to make it fit and pretty proportionate here. Bring this back up. Lens, remove chromatic aberrations. Not sure what geometry is, but and I usually use Lightroom for my minor adjustments to kind of get a baseline for where I want the photo to look, and then I'll import it to Photoshop CC, and I'll usually do my finishing touches there. And that's where I'll put on like my watermark and everything as well. Kind of want this bottom half to be a little darker than. There we go. Clarity up a little bit. All right. Okay. So that looks like a good baseline to me. So it's just Control E now. I'm so used to the previous hotkeys, like Control Shift E to be able to export it, and I'm not used to this more simplified approach now. So now we're in Photoshop CC. Alright. So usually the first thing I do is I open up my Nick collection here, and I'll go to color effects. And you used to have to pay for this collection, but I believe it is free now because they don't support it anymore. But I've used this for maybe 4 or 5 years now, and I've always kind of enjoyed the results I get from it. So I usually always start with my Pro contrast. just to kind of get the tone of the image down for what I want. And you see, if you move left or right, especially in the dynamic contrast, this is the one that makes the most difference. You know, your 100% side is going to be brightening it while darkening the shadows, and then you have your more flat image on the 0% side. And your color cast can actually be quite nice as well, especially if you have usually when you import your images, it used to be Lightroom would, especially like with Fuji cameras, it would kind of adjust the color on its own, and I really never kind of liked how the output looked. So kind of want to go with more of a cooler tone. Yeah, so we'll add another filter. And then usually when I do nature landscape, I kind of work with the detail extractor just to kind of get a little bit more depth to the image. And its default settings are a little rough. And you can adjust your saturation. You can also adjust the intensity of how it affects the details. So here with your large, it's just a larger radius in which it affects the outlines of the image. And then when you have fine, it's more of a smaller pixel count. I'm going to stick with fine. Now usually with this, I usually stick between 3 to 6% because anything above that looks very, very overprocessed. A very sensitive filter. And you can already tell, you know, when we compare, you can already see a difference. We're just getting a lot more contrast and like depth up here. Now we're going to go to let's try skylight filter. Even though I said I kind of want to keep it cooler. Let's see what this looks like. Not feeling it. So since I'm really kind of wanting a specific feeling and mood with this, we can actually go to our cross processing and see what our preset filters can kind of do for us here to put us in the right direction here. So our L03 is usually a more processed midline filter. As you see, like you select it. Doesn't really change too much, but it changes enough to kind of affect the colors mostly. And then you can adjust your strength of it. And essentially all this is doing is just enhancing the contrast, which is not what we want to do. And it's funny, we're doing all of this color processing to it. And I'm not even sure I want to keep this in color. And another fun one to mess with is Indian Summer. Just kind of adjust the colors a little bit. And I want to point out too that I had no plan for these images, because usually what I think of for an image when I'm taking them and what I come out with in Photoshop will usually be two different things. So I never go in saying this is exactly what I want to do and this is how I want it to come out. I usually tend to play with the image a little bit to see what else I could come up with, and I might find something else that I really like. So we're actually just going to get rid of that. So as you see, the difference isn't much, but it's just a little brighter, which is actually, I'm going to take that dynamic contrast down a little bit, make it a little less bright. Alright, so we'll leave this one like this with the color effects, and what we'll do next is wait for this to finish. Taking its sweet time. There we go. We'll hit Control J. We'll make a copy. We'll move this to the top. We'll just leave this one here in the back in case we want to come back to it. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our knit collection and we're going to go to Silver Effects, which is their black and white processing filter or app. And we're just going to look through and see if we can get a baseline for what we want. I like messing with the full dynamic. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not liking already how these black and whites look. So we're going to close that. We don't need this layer anymore, so we're just going to delete it. Yes. So now we have that. So what we will do now is, okay, let me bring up our levels. I'm going to bring this up to give a faded out look. We'll drop it at 41. And we'll push to our mids here. Push our darks here. Then from here, we'll adjust this. Then we'll bring our darks up a little bit so it's not as contrasted and dark. We'll bring our mids up a little bit too. And then we can push our highlights or our whites just a little bit because the whites in the levels is very sensitive. So see, we were at 251. If we push it to 240, you're going to see a massive difference right through here. So I really don't want it to be very much washed out. So, and what we'll do is we'll drop this down a little bit more so we don't have as much of the fade in our darks. You see here. So I kind of like how that came out. And what we'll do now, because I don't think I actually have it. Nope, I don't. I had a hotkey for my contrast, because usually when I do that adjustment, I like to adjust the contrast on my own a little bit. Not enough to really affect it too much, but to kind of give it a little bit more depth than it might have had if I didn't. See, it's not changing too much. I actually kind of like how this came out. So now, since we're kind of dealing with a lot of fine details, what we'll do is we'll flatten the image. And we will make another copy. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to see what this is over here that I was seeing. And I think it was just light coming through. Right here. Okay, so we have some chromatic aberrations coming in through right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our healing tool. We're going to hit our left bracket to make it smaller. What we're going to do is boop, 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 a little bigger, boop, a little bigger. Not really gonna be able to tell the difference because that was so small. So what we'll do is bring this up, and now we can't see it anymore. So as you see, keep an eye on this area right here. All gone. You can't even tell it was there. So what we'll do now, since we have that, it will flatten again. I'm going to make another layer. we're going to go to our filter. We're going to go to Other, High Pass, and you use this to accentuate a lot of your details. You never really want to go past your radius of 2 pixels, because once you do that, your haloing effect is going to be quite intense for sharpening. And this is, I guess I could have mentioned this first, this is a high pass sharpening. So I usually stick it around 2 pixels. So as you see, we have our high pass filter layer, and then we have a regular. So what we're going to do is you're going to go to normal, and you're going to go to overlay. So it's just going to overlay this filter on top of this. And as you see, it's not really going to make too much of a difference if you look at it from here. But if we zoom in, you can see minor details that are getting sharpened. And we'll look at the road here that we're in focus with, like right here. You see this, a lot of the edges are a little bit more contrasted. You can look at some of the leaves here. So we'll look at this area here. And you see just our edges of the leaves are getting drawn out a little bit more. But unfortunately, by doing this, and this image really isn't too bad because the ISO was rather low, but the higher ISOs that you shoot, you need to be aware that the high pass sharpening is also going to sharpen the noise. So your noise is going to be more prominent as well. So that's something to always be cognitive of. And I'm not going to use it, but if you do decide to go to the Knit collection, it's in Google. You just have to Google Knit collection. There is a Define, which is their noise reduction app, and then you have your sharpener here too. But I really don't use this too much because the algorithm that it does is kind of unwieldy, so I just like to do it myself. But the Define is their noise reduction, and it actually works pretty well because you can kind of pick where you want the noise reduction to be focused at and how strong you need it to be. So, but we're not going to use it on this image. So then lastly, we're going to flatten the image. We're going to go over to our brush, and I have made a watermark brush, so I can easily put in my watermark. I can adjust the opacity, the flow of it, the smoothing. I can adjust the size of it, so by hitting my left and right brackets by your delete key and P. So what we'll do is, I think we're white currently, so we'll just put it. And this is always, one of the harder parts is finding the right place to put the watermark that it can be seen but doesn't disrupt the image. And sometimes your watermark can actually help balance the image a little bit too. So if you have a lot of dead space in an image, you can put a watermark in there to kind of deter away from all that dead space, and it kind of brings a little bit of balance to it. Now, you don't always want to rely on that. That's a very situational option, but it can work in the right times. So we're actually just going to leave that right there because, I mean, there's a lot going on down here, and I don't want to put it up here because it's going to be too distracting with all the leaves. So we're just going to put it in this dark area right here on this water spot on the road. And then we're going to save. Save it as a JPEG. I'm going to put it in my pictures, all my previous images, and we'll put Cemetery Road. Save it. Baseline optimized to maximum of 10 because there's really not much reason to go any higher than that. You're not really going to see a difference. Okay, and we're done. Now we'll go back to Lightroom. We'll work on the next image I don't want to work on, and I wasn't sure which one of these to work on because one of these is actually shot with the dynamic range optimizer on. So this is the one with the dynamic range optimizer on through the camera. and this is the one with it off. So I like how this image is a little bit more, equal on the histogram across the image. This one has more of a moodier kind of feel to it. So it's all about personal preference, really. And I feel like I'm just going to work with the dynamic range optimized one because it'll give me a little bit more room to kind of mess with the lighting. So even so, I can just bring the exposure down a little bit, match it. See, it's almost identical right now. That was actually a pretty good guess. Oh, we'll bump the contrast up, brightness up a little bit. Bring our shadows up a little bit too, because these trees are quite dark. And actually, once I hit the clarity, it'll probably bring those up too. Bring our whites up, but we're going to bring this highlights, because I don't want too much of a blowout on these pillars and this road right here to be distracting. We'll hit our clarity. And now let's give us some more detail around this fence here. Okay, yeah. The original, and then what we have so far. Right, like I said, I'm still learning this new or the Lightroom update, so. And this one might actually work as a black and white. Let's see what it looks like in this. I usually don't edit black and whites in Lightroom just because I don't like to kind of set myself up when I go into Photoshop. But sometimes I kind of know that this is the route I want to take with it, especially if it is black and white. And I actually kind of like how this is coming out already. Kind of gives more of a a sinister sort of feeling. Let me do the correction here because it's going to brighten my sides a little bit. Even though it says that straightened it, it doesn't look straight to me. So even though we autoed it, I'm just going to tilt it a little bit more counterclockwise. Bring these corners out. I think that's going to look good. I'm looking at my second monitor here through the recording to see if that's actually going to look good, and it looks fine to me. Unfortunately, I could probably sit here all day trying to make this level, but I don't think I have enough space on my computer to be able to record that long, so I'll bump our sharpening up. We don't want to worry about color noise, especially because it's black and white, there's no color. Some of our noise reduction can come off of it, but in black and white, your noise really is kind of a plus and not a negative. Especially if you come from a film background, shooting film, not shooting like video film. And our remove chromatic aberrations is not going to be a problem because there is no color to remove. Let's see. So let's bring our greens up a little bit so we can brighten our trees. And it's actually probably going to be more yellows, honestly. Yep. So that'll be fine, actually. And bring our reds. It's going to affect our bricks a little bit. Or not. So our bricks are actually going to follow in the orange. There we go. And I kind of like that to be darker because I don't want anything bright on these edges to kind of deter away, because my focus is right here in the middle. And actually, a vignette would probably kind of help that, but I don't know if I want to take that route yet or not. So yeah, of course, not going to tell me what the color is. All right, so I want this to flatten out a little bit. Bring our whites down. And what's going to bother me is this right here. And I may remove this in Photoshop. We'll see though, how it turns out. I'm actually kind of liking how this is turning out the way it is. So we will Control E it over to Photoshop as a TIFF file. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is go to our hand tool and we're going to fit screen. That way we're not looking at a small image. And what we're going to do next is, okay, so before I even do any filters, I want to see what this is going to look like if I remove this. So instead of actually using the healing tool, I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool. And what I can do here is I can select an area like this. I can right click and I can fill it and do content aware. And what it's going to do is it's going to select the areas around where I selected, and it's going to fill that area with data that matches it. And sometimes this works. Most times this works. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so if you see, that actually came out pretty well. So we're going to hit Control D to deselect, and that actually came out really well. Better than I was expecting it to. But what I am going to do, because I'm seeing it right now, is I'm going to remove those little lines of lights right there, because that was distracting me. I feel that if my eye can catch it, then someone else is going to see it too, or not. I've noticed most cases they don't, but I feel like they will. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to hit these bright spots that are very distracting to my eye. Okay, so now we have that. So now we're going to hit Control J to copy our layer. Go to filter, even though we're still in black and white, we're going to go to color effects, because I can still use my pro contrast and my detail extractor. So color cast isn't going to matter because there is no color to cast. What we can do is we can do our correct contrast. Just a little bit in our dynamic contrast, maybe just a little bit. It's coming out a little brighter than I wanted it to. I can just hit my highlights and it'll flatten my highlights out a little. You can adjust your shadows that way too, but I don't want to do that right now. But doing this can kind of give you a sense of what I want to do at the end. And if you notice, I try not to stick to a particular style of editing because I like to make everything look different, so I don't have a routine that I get into. But I do like having that faded out look to my images. I don't know what it is about it, but I really enjoy it. So I will probably do my layers filter that I did on the previous image. So then we will go to our detail extractor. And you see, as I say, when it's default at 25%, it's quite abrasive. Like when you remove it, you see that it's quite a very prominent feature. So we're just going to bump this down a little bit, so it's still going to affect it, but not as much. And I mainly only want it because I know it's going to affect this fence too, and it's going to make it stand out a little bit more. I can adjust the contrast, but I don't know if I want to do that because it's going to make it very dark. We'll leave it at 5. Put this down to 3 or 2. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't even know if I want the detail extractor on there because... yeah, I guess we will. Because it's definitely adding a lot of detail to these pillars. I think that's all I really can do with this right now. We're not going to really do too much with this. Give this a second to prepare it. While we're waiting for this, thank you for watching. This is my very first Photoshop video. I've had a lot of requests for people wanting me to do stuff like this because I always want to see how I edit. And I always tell them there's nothing special because I have no routine. I don't do the same thing every time, even though sometimes I do. So, and I never go in with a plan. as you can see by these two images, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, as they say. So I like this little detail right here. I didn't notice the leaf in here. Can't really tell, but what we will do now, since we have this layer all by itself, we will do our fade filter. So we're just going to push our blacks up. 50 is going to be too high, but it's going to give me a baseline to start with. And I'm going to push my mids and my darks. And it's going to give me a start. Then I'll just bring this down. As you see, as I bring it down, everything's still dark because I've pushed all these. But what we're going to do is bring this over. We're going to bring our mids over. We're not going to touch our highlights because we're already pretty bright right here on these pillars and the road right here. I'm going to drop this a little further. This over a little bit. This over a little bit, which might not be bad right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to preview what we look like here. This is before I do the fade filter, and this is after. Okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to push these my darks a little bit more this way. And really it's just about finding that right balance. You see the difference here. Really not too much on these parts right here, but it's just fading my my real like dark spots out. So we'll do that, then we'll come up to our image adjustments and do brightness and contrast, and we'll just push our contrast a little bit too. And when we push our contrast, it gets rid of some of the faded out portions of our like super dark shadow areas, but it's just kind of a way to help balance the image out as well. So actually, I think we're going to stick with this. I like how this came out. So we're going to just flatten our image. We're going to go back over to our brush tool. And my brush is very bright right now. So, and it's also, yeah, white. Okay, so that's good. So as you see here, I want it white. But Control Z here. And if you just hit X, you'll see right here, it switches your colors. So right here, my filter or my brush is going to be black. So if I was wanting to put it like down here, I can just hit X and it'll switch it over. And it'll make it stand out a little bit more. But we don't want to do that. So my opacity is actually quite a little low and you can't really see it. So we're going to put it right here. Oops. Do that. There we go. Okay. We switch over right here, up the corner. We're looking good here. So that's that image there. So what we do is Control Shift S. It's all about hotkeys. Hotkeys are the best. Switch to a JPEG. Our pictures. Minecraft photography, and I always upload straight to my OneDrive. That way I can have everything, my iPad, my phone, anywhere I want to go, and it's not just restricted only to my computer. Change the image name to Cemetery Gates. For those Pantera fans, you'll know the reference. Alright, and we'll save. We'll only leave our quality at 10 because there's no reason to go any bigger other than if you want to just take up more of your hard drive. Hit OK and done. Even though it's still, if you were saving directly to your computer, these names would change. But since I'm uploading it to a cloud, they're probably not going to. At least they never did before. So that's why these aren't changing. And when you have little stars right here, just a heads up, that means that your image is not saved to the computer. So before you close, always make sure that you get rid of these stars if you want to keep your images on the computer. That way you don't lose any progress of your editing. So for right now, we're going to end this video right there. and I will probably upload another video where I work only on this image here, because I really want to play with this image because I feel like there's a lot I can do with it. So for now, we're going to end it right here. My name has been Ryan, and it always has been for the entire video, not just right now. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.